All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. Well, I want to thank Doug, of course, and his family for letting me come. This is great. We have a small group, but hopefully you guys will like what I have to say and share the message with your friends and family. My name is Brady Quinn. I'm the Utah Operations Director for the campaign. So it's a glorified grunt for Utah, right? I manage the 4,000 to 5,000 supporters that we have throughout the state. Encouraging them to make phone calls, knock doors and canvas, host these kinds of house parties, that type of thing. So part of my job is working with each of them as well as working with our communications director and our regional director for the campaign to kind of spread the message as wide as we possibly can. I've worked in Utah politics for the last couple of years. I've consulted for local candidates on city council races, house races, and Senate races for the Utah House and Senate. I worked on Jonathan Johnson's campaign when he was doing his bid for governor here in Utah. If you don't know who he is, he's the chairman of Overstock.com. He unfortunately did lose in the primary election, but we had some big wins, especially when he pulled out a 55% win at the state convention earlier this year. So we had some successes there. I was taking a little bit of time off between campaigns, doing a little bit of consulting on the side for some local house races, and then got a call while I was up on the beach at Bear Lake about a month ago, and was asked if I'd be willing to help with this campaign until the November 8th election. It was tough to say yes right off the bat. You hear a candidate is entering the race in August, 3 months before the election, and you think, man, what are we trying to accomplish here? I had already decided at that point that I was going to vote for Evan based on principle. He and I align very, very closely politically, and I was impressed with his resume. So ultimately, I had decided at that point that I would vote for him. But when I got the call from his campaign manager out of Florida, it was tough, and I had to go through the whole. Okay, what are the chances? How is this going to work out? How is it going to be possible? So I went through that whole argument and ultimately decided I needed to do the right thing, and the right thing would be to step up and to help in any capacity that I could. And then, of course, they said, all right, we want you to run our operations in Utah, all of it. Good luck. Is not necessarily something that I had done before. I've always been on the communications and public relations side of things. So working with media, dealing with emails and social media and all of the really background stuff where I don't have to talk to anybody unless it's press, right? And I was comfortable with that. So to be asked to do the grassroots organizing and to go and speak at these different events on behalf of Evan was intimidating. I spoke to a large group at Snow College this last weekend and have been doing these at a couple of other houses throughout the state. But I'm pleased to do it. It's a true pleasure to be able to represent Evan and to speak on his behalf, especially when he's traveling the country. I have had the opportunity to sit down with him on multiple occasions and talk policy, talk about the bid, talk about what we want to accomplish, and talk about the movement that's taking place throughout the state and throughout the country. I'm going to jump into Evan's background now that I've given you my entire life spiel. So Evan was born in Provo, Utah. His parents were attending BYU, and then they moved to Washington State, where he was raised. He lived there for most of his life, returning back to Provo to attend Brigham Young University himself, where he graduated with an undergraduate degree in international relations or studies, one of those. I can't remember off the top of my head. While he was attending Brigham Young University, he was recruited by the CIA. He was in training and doing some work for the CIA while attending BYU for approximately 2 years. After he graduated from BYU was about the same time as the 9/11 attacks in 2001. At that time, Evan volunteered to move into CIA operations and to go overseas and work on counterterrorism projects. He served in the CIA for 11 years, mostly doing counterterrorism efforts. After he got out of the CIA, he went back to school, graduated from the Wharton School of Business with an MBA, and then went to work for Goldman Sachs doing investment banking out of California, out of the Bay Area. He did that for just a short time before he got a call from the House Republican committee, and he was called up to be the policy advisor for the House Committee on National Security and Foreign Affairs. He did that for a few years and then got the call asking him to be the chief policy director for the House Republican Conference, where he did that for another 3 years. When he decided to jump into the race, what had occurred, of course, we're all very familiar with. We had a slew of presidential candidates, and we ended up with the worst possible candidate to represent the Republican and Democratic parties. It's scary, to say the least, who we have in this race and who we have representing us as a nation. When they found out it was going to be Trump, a movement started to try and find somebody who would run as an independent against Donald Trump. Evan, of course, hoped that somebody with more name recognition and national ID would jump into the race that kind of had an infrastructure, maybe somebody that had run for president before. But unfortunately, that was not the case, and everyone turned down the offers and the plea for somebody to run. Evan called up Joel Searby, who's the campaign manager, chief strategist for the campaign, and said, "Hey, what is going on with your efforts to try and recruit somebody? Where are you at?" He said, I'd like to help. I'd like to come in and help with the race and see what I can do to really push this independent candidate, whoever you've found. And Joel ultimately came back and said, "Evan, we haven't found anybody. We're still looking. Will you do it?" And Evan said, "Whoa, I'm not sure I'm the person for this. I'm not sure I'm the guy to do this. I've been in the background my whole life, been a CIA operative working behind the scenes. I've been doing policy in the House, working behind the scenes. I'm not sure I'm the guy for this." So he took a little bit of time to think about it and ultimately decided that if somebody wasn't going to step up and do it, he needed to. Somebody needed to step up and do the right thing, which is why he frequently says it's never too late to do the right thing. He's frequently asked, "Why did you jump into the race so late?" And that's the long answer. He had hoped somebody else would jump in and do it. But fortunately, we got Evan. I think we couldn't have asked for a better candidate. We couldn't have asked for a candidate that was more well-versed in national security and foreign affairs and public policy. And he understands what it takes to fix our economy and what it's going to take to really correct the direction that our country is headed. He understands what being a moral and true conservative stands for, rather than this alt-right movement, this Trumpism of conservatism that's not what we all know and love and believe in. A couple of policy positions that I want to just talk to you about, and then I want to take questions as much as possible. I don't want to sit and talk at you all night. I'd like to answer your questions. Evan does believe in small government. He's a true conservative in that sense. He believes that in the 10th Amendment to the Constitution and federalism, and bringing the power back to the states and allowing states to decide what's going to benefit them best, rather than big government saying, "We know what's best for you. We know what's best for your families and your children and your infrastructure in the states." He also believes in fiscal conservatism. He believes the national debt crisis is truly is a crisis. And it's something that needs to be reversed. This upward trend of radically increasing the debt every year needs to head the opposite direction. And part of that is by cutting government at the federal level rather than increasing it. As far as immigration, since that happens to be a large and very popular subject during this presidential election, Evan does believe that we need to secure our borders. Now, that doesn't mean that Mexico pays to build a wall, which is never going to happen. Mexico has said they're not going to build, or they're not going to pay for our wall. Regardless of how much Trump says that that's going to be the case, it's not going to happen. But Evan does believe we need to secure our borders. What does that mean? In some areas, that means we build a wall. In some areas, that means we build a double wall. In some areas, that means we need electronic surveillance, drones, and other technological means in order to truly protect the border and really know what's going on there. I want to talk about national security for just a moment. It is a concerning subject. We have terror attacks occurring all over the world. And very recently on home soil, and they seem to be growing more and more prevalent and more close to home soil. Evan believes that we truly need to ramp up our efforts on destroying terrorism, on taking down ISIS. Part of that includes rounding up and containing Bashar al-Assad, who is a dictator for all intents and purposes. He's the president of Syria and has really caused this movement to continue to move forward. And it's time that we do something about it, rather than sitting back and just watching everything unfold. We have a president who has done nothing to really take care of the issue, and under Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump's leadership, we don't know that anything will happen to really get this under control. One last position that I want to talk to you guys about. I think most of you, or not, if not all of you, are parents and have children in the education system, and are probably pretty frustrated with Common Core and the standardized testing that's taking place currently. Evan does believe that we need to localize education. That the Federal Department of Education has no place in deciding what is best for students here in Utah, and specifically in your district. He does believe that parents should also have the choice in the education that their children receives. If parents want to send their kids to private school or a charter school or public school or homeschool, they should be able to choose that avenue, and we should be providing them the options and the opportunity to make that decision. So that's really the points. That's very high level, and I want to give you guys an opportunity to hit me with some hard questions. I'll be honest with you, I may not have an answer on everything. Yes, I've talked with Evan. Yes, I'm familiar with a lot of his positions, but I can't speak for him on every issue. There's a lot to this whole running for president thing, and I'm grateful that we have somebody who's as well versed as he is. But I wouldn't want to speak on his behalf and not accurately portray exactly what he believes. So go ahead, hit me with your questions. I'm happy to take them.
I have a quick question.
Please.
You mentioned that one of his economic platforms is to help reduce the national debt,
Yeah.
which now stands at nearly $20 trillion.
Correct.
Can you sort of clarify or expand a little bit upon that, especially since you also mentioned that he has plans to expand the national borders and to combat terrorism efforts
Yeah.
in Syria?
So Evan believes the government's responsibility is to protect our nation. So we will see increases in the size of our military and in our national security efforts. However, again, he does believe in reducing the size of our government. So the Department of Education, he wants to simplify our tax code, which would eradicate some of the funding that's going into departments such as the IRS and similar federally controlled departments there. There is a big government equals big spending at the government level. The more that we cut government at the federal level, the more we can reduce that spending. Part of increasing that tax code is eliminating regulation and some of the tax burden on corporations.
So to interrupt, are you talking about a flat tax here? Is that what you're proposing?
Not necessarily. So Evan has proposed a kind of a 3-tier tax system. So it's not as convoluted or complicated as what we see now, but the more money you make, the higher you'll be in that tax bracket. But it will be 3 tiers. It will be simple. It will be simplified, not necessarily a simple flat tax, but a simplified tiered system.
Can you give us a little bit of an example of what those tiers would look like? For example, Hillary Clinton is proposing to bring the highest tax bracket up to 60%.
It would not be that high.
What is Evan's?
I think we're looking at somewhere around, and they don't have the exact numbers in position yet, but I think we're looking at somewhere around 15, 20 to 25, 25 to 35 type ranges.
And how does that differ from what's already in place?
What's currently in place? Well, there's all sorts of different ways to skirt around tax codes, of course, and part of that is let's put our money overseas or whatever the case may be there. But another big part of it is it's so convoluted and complicated that nobody really understands the tax code in its entirety. So yes, we do have somewhat of a tiered system, but I couldn't tell you who pays what at this point based on their income. I don't think anybody could. But I also think, or I also know that some corporate tax rates are up around 50% or higher, and there needs to be cuts there. There really needs to be cuts. I don't think we'll see, as far as corporate tax rates are concerned, those will be significantly lower. But as far as federal income tax is concerned, I think we'll see lowering again down below 35% or lower. Again, I'm not positive on those numbers. These are just numbers that have been tossed around. I'd really like to see, as many of you would, exact numbers of exactly where we're going to be at, and I think we'll see those coming out soon.
And I hate to dominate the platform. I apologize. I'll limit it to my last question.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Somebody else jumps in. But you mentioned that he wants to reduce the national debt, but you're also talking about reducing the size of government and lowering taxes.
Yeah.
If taxes are the main source of income for the country, how are we going to reduce our debt while at the same time losing the source of income?
A lot of it comes in creating a business-friendly environment, bringing businesses back to America, right? As we bring business back to America, we allow startups and entrepreneurs to really get their start rather than being taxed out or regulated out of business. We'll start to see more and more businesses rise. The economy will improve. We'll see more income there, and that will help. But cutting spending is big. Do I know the exact areas where we're going to cut? I don't at this point. But I think we can probably come up with a more accurate picture of where there will be cuts than Donald Trump can. So, and we know that Hillary Clinton won't make cuts at all. In fact, we'll see spending increase. So, what other questions do we have?
I'm curious where he's at.
Polling?
Yes.
Let's talk strategy for a minute. Here in Utah, a poll was released on Sunday by the Salt Lake Tribune and the Hinckley Institute of Politics at the University of Utah. It had Evan at 12% here in Utah, which is huge. 2 weeks ago, he was at 9%. And on August 8th, when he announced his candidacy, he was at 0%. So for him to go from 0 to 12% in just a little over a month is no easy feat, to say the least. Just in Utah. So where does that leave Evan on a national level, right? How does he win the presidency by only being at 12% in Utah when he's only polling nationwide at somewhere around 1%? The 12th Amendment to the Constitution states they have to receive a majority of electoral college votes in order to win the presidency outright. That means that Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton would have to win 270 electoral votes in the general election on November 8th in order to win the presidency. Currently, polls have, the most recent poll that I've seen that came out either today or yesterday, had Hillary at somewhere around 272 and Donald at 266. We'll see some slight increases, we believe, in Donald's polling over the next little while. Probably a little above 270 with Hillary dropping below the 270 mark. Not for sure, but we can kind of predict that that's the trend that we're seeing. Our goal is not to win the election outright by getting 270 electoral votes. Our goal is to block Hillary and Trump from getting 270 electoral votes, in which case the race would go to the House of Representatives. Each state in the House would have a vote, and they would choose who our next president of the United States would be. In order for Evan to be in that running, he'd have to win a state. He has to have electoral votes to be considered. The top 3 candidates who receive the most electoral votes are picked from among from the House, or the House picks from among those 3 candidates. So our big goal is we need to win 1 or 2 or 3 states in this election in order to do that. There is a historical precedence for it. Mind you, it's about 200 years ago. But John Quincy Adams' race against Andrew Jackson went to the House. Neither of them received a majority of electoral college votes in the House, and the race went to the House, and the House picked John Quincy Adams as our next president. So it's possible. It's been done before. We believe that we can do that again. We believe that we can bar them from each receiving the 270 required to win the election outright, and that we can get this election to the House, where, as it so happens, Evan has worked for the last 5 years developing very strong relationships as an advisor to House Republicans, but also working very closely with members of both sides of the aisle who are disenfranchised with both of the candidates running for president. So we believe that if we can get the election tossed to the House, that we could pull out a win in the House. It kind of explains our strategy a little bit. Utah is a very high priority, if not the highest priority for the campaign. Evan set up his national headquarters here in Salt Lake City. It's part of my job. I run the national headquarters here to ensure that we continuously progress in our polling here in Utah and see if we can't pull out a win here. If we continue to trend at the rate that we're trending, we'll very likely beat Hillary Clinton on November 8th and very possibly beat Donald Trump on November 8th. But it requires supporters and voters to vote their conscience. Unfortunately, we have a 2-party system that is set on scaring you into voting for one of the major 2-party candidates. Well, if you don't vote for Donald Trump, you're voting for Hillary Clinton, which is absolutely not true. If you're voting for a 3rd-party candidate, you're voting for that candidate. You're not voting for anybody else but that candidate. Them not earning your vote is their fault. It's not your fault. Everyone says Hillary Clinton is worse than Donald Trump. Well, everyone here in Utah. And then, of course, in other places we hear Donald Trump is worse than Hillary Clinton, so I'm voting for Hillary, or the other way around. They're the same person. I don't know how one could argue that either candidate is better than the other. We have seen flip-flopping on issues. We've seen both outright lie. We've seen both con the American people. Donald Trump through Trump University, Hillary Clinton through the Clinton Foundation. Nothing is new or different between these 2 candidates. In fact, they're old friends. Donald Trump has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Clinton Foundation, and Hillary Clinton attended Trump's wedding. They're good friends, and to say that they differ on policy positions is just not true. Trump has flip-flopped on issues, claiming to be a conservative during this election when in 2008 he was a registered Democrat, and actually endorsed Hillary Clinton in her bid for the presidency. You can't tell me that he has changed his opinion of her in 8 years when he's since donated to her and has supported her in her efforts. So again, I think neither candidate is any better than the other. They're very similar in their views and their positions. So again, voting for Evan or another third-party candidate is a vote for that candidate, not for the party that you're against. Just to tell you, I've been a registered Republican since I was 18 years old, and I currently, for the time being, probably not for very much longer, sit on the executive committee for the Salt Lake County Republican Party, as well as the board for the Utah Young Republicans. I cannot support the Republican candidate for president, and I can no longer support the party. The party has left my ideals and my beliefs. The platform, the supposed platform, may supposedly align with my views, but the party doesn't show that, and it's becoming growingly worse, which is why I have agreed to work outside of party politics and to help Evan win Utah. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I hope that explains the strategy. That's the very, very long answer to your question. Hit me with some other questions.
That's what I wanted to know. It's just like, how is it possible?
How do we pull out a win? Just for informational purposes, the structure, especially here in Utah, is unheard of for this campaign. For us to have as much support and as many volunteers as we have is unprecedented. It's never been done before. Marco Rubio, who had a very strong network, his network was a third of the size that our network currently is, and ours is growing. It's unbelievable. We have an extreme amount of support across the nation, but a very concentrated amount of support here in Utah, and it's growing. It's growing, and if each of you tells one or two or three of your friends that you're voting for Evan and why you're voting for Evan, that will continue to grow. We can see doubling the 12% that we have in polls currently, and really beating out these other two candidates. Trump's support continues to drop. Hillary's support continues to drop here in Utah. Gary Johnson, we're neck and neck with here in Utah. And now that this new poll has come out and people are seeing that Evan has such strong support, we believe that we'll continue to pull support from these other candidates as Evan shows that he's a viable, qualified candidate. I truly believe that he is the only candidate running among any of the major or third parties that is qualified to be president. He is the only candidate with legitimate national security experience. Hillary's national security experience as the Secretary of State was alarming, to say the least, and she's not qualified to be president, and neither is Donald Trump. I wouldn't want to give the nuclear football to Donald Trump, ever, and would be very, very hesitant to do so with Hillary Clinton. But I could rest well knowing that we have somebody with the type of experience that Evan has, being the commander-in-chief of the United States. Yeah.
So assuming you do take Utah, assuming it does go to the House
Yeah.
to decide, how are you so confident that the House would decide on him and not Republican, because they're Republican controlled right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we believe that Evan's relationship plays a big part in it. We believe that because he has such strong support and relationships, and he's advised these people for so long, that we could garner their support. We believe that they're just as uncomfortable as the American people with Donald Trump at the helm. And again, Republicans hold the majority right now. And we also believe that there are disenfranchised Democrats in Congress that would refuse to vote for Hillary, but would be comfortable voting for Evan based on his national security experience and his ability to lead, to say the least, rather than these other two candidates. So that's why we believe that the House would support Evan. We believe that they are uncomfortable with the candidates that we have.
Are there any other states
That we're targeting?
yeah.
Idaho and Wyoming are two states that we're targeting, not as heavily as Utah, but we do have a large presence there. We believe that as our support grows in Utah, so will our support in Idaho and Wyoming. They tend to, some of these states tend to look to Utah to see what Utah is going to do. We also have a very strong presence in Minnesota and Wisconsin, which are some odd states, but we've gotten party endorsements and are on the ballot on those states because a third party decided to give us their ballot line. So we do have some support. We'll be campaigning hard in those states. Virginia, we're pulling fairly well in. It was such a late start campaign, and we believe our support will continue to increase there. So those are some of our focuses. Arizona, we have a focus in Arizona as well. We feel like we could build quite a bit of support there. New Mexico, a little bit of support, but we feel like Gary Johnson's presence is a little stronger in New Mexico as he was their governor. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
How many states is he officially on the ballot for, and what can be done or is being done to try to get onto states that deadlines have already passed?
Yeah. We're on the ballot. Evan's name is on the ballot in 11 states. He's a registered write-in candidate in 14 other states, if I'm remembering that correctly, although that number increases almost on a daily basis. I think we're well past that. We may be past that. I think there are 31 or 32 states eligible to vote for Evan at this point, either as a write-in or his name is on the ballot. We're working with other states to ensure that we meet their requirements to be a write-in candidate on those states as well. So when all is said and done, Evan will be, you'll be able to vote for Evan in over 40 states. Most likely we won't be able to get all 50, but we are definitely going to push. In states where we can't get in as a write-in or get a ballot line, we're petitioning to see what we can do there, and if push comes to shove, we'll pursue legal action. We have a very, very good legal team whose expertise is in ballot access. And we believe that these are some legal battles that we actually can win based on constitutionality and different things there. So end of the day, most, if not all, Americans will be able to vote for Evan come November. People say, well, how can he progress or win a state as a write-in candidate? There is a long list of candidates that have won states, won primary elections, won general elections through write-in candidacy. Recently, a senator out of Alaska won a Senate race through a write-in campaign. And again, long list of primary elections that have pulled out wins with write-ins. So it's possible, and it's been done to win a state out of a write-in. Yeah, Doug.
So how does when the House votes, if it gets to that point,
Mm-hmm.
is it someone has to have 50%, or is it just whoever has the most, period?
We're not exactly sure, and the 12th Amendment doesn't exactly outline it. We believe that the House sets the rules if it goes to the House. Does that make sense? So if the election goes to the House, they sit down and they vote and agree on a set of rules for this election, and it's decided at that point. We believe it will probably be a majority. It will probably require a majority vote. There may be multiple rounds of voting. We're not sure. We'll have to wait and see what happens if it does go to the House. It's only been done once before, and we think that they'll have to reestablish rules. Yeah, please.
What are the chances of the 3 third-party candidates getting together for a debate since they got shafted on the president debate?
So I'll let you know that is something we are working on. And we are confident that we can pull something out. I can't give you an exact timeline on when that will be and what network will host it, but we believe that we will pull off an undercard debate for these candidates that were not able to be in the major debates with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. So yes, I think we can see, we can expect that will happen. There's, of course, I can't promise anything at this point, but it is in the works, and things are looking in a forward positive direction, which would only help.
To the campaign strategy, besides word of mouth, about how you're going to get Evan's name out there so that people know that he's a candidate.
Yeah. So a lot of it is the grassroots efforts. You telling your friends and family why you're voting for Evan. If one person shares with 10 people, that just continues to grow exponentially, right? So we build the name recognition through grassroots efforts, which is part of my job, right? Is to coordinate with supporters and volunteers and everyday people to try and encourage them to share with their friends, family, neighbors, etc. Evan's name. We do have a very strong online presence. We have one of the best digital teams in the nation. Really pounding hard online. We are running some digital ads that way as well. We've been asked, are we going to do commercials, TV commercials? They're very expensive, and it's more difficult to target. We can target better with digital ads and really hit the right people with the right message more than we can throwing $1 million behind a TV commercial. So we'll continue to do things through social media and digital ads, but the grassroots effort is huge. I've been sending out large phone lists to dozens of people that are making calls from home. We've had tons of people show up to make calls in our call center in Murray. So we're doing phone calls, we're doing emails, we're doing door-to-door. We'll be launching a pretty strong canvassing effort in the next 2 weeks for people to go door-to-door with flyers sharing the message of Evan. And again, just encouraging people to talk to their friends and family and neighbors about why they support Evan is huge. We have received a couple of endorsements which have helped. We believe and are anticipating that we'll receive more endorsements as we get closer to Election Day, especially as Evan's support increases here in Utah. We think that we'll see some prominent figures step out and support him publicly. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm just not up to date on politics, but do people know that if he's not running to get like the whole presidential, do they know how that works?
It's hard. It's a hard message to deliver, and no, not everybody does. I mean, show of hands, who knew what the 12th Amendment was before somebody explained it to you tonight or in the last little while? So yeah, you guys.
No, somebody posted about it on Facebook, so I read an article about it.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, I mean, very small percentage, even in this room, knew about the 12th Amendment. So it's something that we're trying to communicate, and we'll continue to work to communicate.
I just feel like people go, well, it's not going to be Hillary or Trump, then I'm not voting.
Well, absolutely. We're seeing a lot of that. There's a lot of people that are saying, well, I'm just going to stay home in November. I'm not going to vote. We don't want that. We absolutely don't want that. There's multiple reasons for that. Of course, we want to try and keep conservative candidates in the House and Senate and maintain control there. But more than that, it's important that the American people not become complacent and simply vote for the lesser of two evils. Part of the movement throughout the country and with Evan's campaign is more than just trying to get Evan elected as the president. One large goal behind this movement, a secondary goal, is to reform conservatism and really come up with better options than what we've seen from either party, and most recently the Republican Party. Conservative values are not what they're supposed to be, and it's time that we return to our roots and to the policies that our country was founded upon, the constitutional policies and the founding principles. Part of that may include an emergence of a viable third party. The structure is already in place in many areas, including Utah. With such strong support here, we believe that it would be very easy to implement and start a new party here and in some other states where there is a strong support and presence for this reform. So again, we don't want people to stay home because we want them to go out and vote for principled candidates and do the right thing and help us with this movement to reform conservatism. And again, it could very well likely be the emergence of a new party come the end of the year, come the election time. So hope that answers that question.
Does he have a running mate yet? And if not, at what point can we anticipate announcements?
It's a really good question, one that I would like the answer to as well. So we've discussed again in depth throughout the campaign, Evan, with advisors and our political team and our policy advisors are heavily evaluating and narrowing down the pool of potential running mates for Evan. On paper, on the ballot in November, you'll see Nathan Johnson is Evan's running mate, again, on paper. He's a good friend of Evan's who's, for all intents and purposes, very qualified to be the vice president. He's an attorney by trade, great on policy and other things, but does not want to be the vice president. And I don't blame him. So we'll see a true running mate emerge in the coming weeks. But the vetting process is very meticulous, and we want to make sure that we pick the right person. Come November and the election, and if this election is tossed to the House, as is our goal, it won't matter who Evan's running mate is, because if the 12th Amendment does get kicked in, then the race for vice president would go to the Senate. The Senate would pick between the two candidates that receive the most electoral votes for vice president. So we would likely see Pence or Kane as our vice president. But again, we don't know. They could resign, in which case Evan would have the opportunity to appoint the next vice president at that point. What other questions do we have? Yeah, Doug.
Worst case, he doesn't, one of the two, Hillary or Trump, get the electoral votes needed to win. Is this something that he would continue? The
movement would continue. I don't know that Evan would run again. I can't confidently say that he would. I don't think Evan wanted to run in the first place. I'm not sure that Evan likes being in the limelight. He was comfortable working behind the scenes and doing that. But he has a deep love for our country, which is why he said that he would run in the first place. Being president, he doesn't aspire to it. He doesn't have this power trip where he has decided that he needs to hold the power of the free world in his hands. That was not why he ran. He ran because he wanted to see a legitimate candidate run for office, somebody who is qualified, somebody who cares about our country and loves our country and isn't in it for the power, but is in it because they want our country to trend in a positive direction rather than a negative one. So will Evan run again? Will his race continue? I don't know. I can't answer that one way or the other. This is the gospel according to Brady, but I can't see Evan doing this again. But I wouldn't be surprised if he did. But again, mainly Evan is in this for the movement, to ensure that we are moving in the right direction. The two-party system as we know it hasn't been around for ever, contrary to their belief, right? The Republican Party emerged because of Abraham Lincoln and his run back in the 1800s. The Whig Party was a prominent party at the time and was kind of phased out with the Republican Party. We're hoping to see something similar come the end of this election and over the next couple of years as we try to fix what we know and believe of conservative values and the founding principles of our country. So we'll really push this movement. I think Evan will be a really grinding force behind that movement going forward, as well as some of the leaders of this campaign. Rick Wilson, one of Evan's chief policy advisors, was a very prominent figure within the GOP, and he's ready for something new. He's ready to help start something else. Joel Searby, another very prominent figure, has helped a lot of candidates win races, and he's ready to help push something different forward. There are a lot of folks like me, more on the statewide, local politics level, that are ready to jump in and get involved and help the movement move forward. I would love to be a part of helping change the way we see conservative politics here in Utah and throughout the nation. So I hope that answers your question, Doug. Hit me with some hardball questions. Nobody, yeah.
So if al-Assad is taken out in Syria, how does he propose preventing the power vacuum that was created in Iraq and created in Afghanistan from occurring again in another?
A lot of it would involve us helping consult in that area. That doesn't necessarily mean boots on the ground from U.S. soldiers, but Evan has stated that CIA operatives such as himself could help consult and train the appropriate people to step in and take over and take control. Whether that's military force or however it may be, but we'll play a role in that. We will absolutely have to play a role in that through training and consulting and whatever other means necessary to try and prevent. We can't just, of course, constrain or take out or whatever these leaders without having a plan in place. So we would make sure that we have people on the ground there ready to assist, but not necessarily a military force. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other? I don't want to.
Kind of on that same line, how does he plan, or what strategy is he thinking of to take out Bashar al-Assad from the theater?
I'm not necessarily sure that it's let's take out Bashar al-Assad. It may be more of a let's rein him in, let's bring him into custody, something along those lines. And I'm not sure that an airstrike is the answer there. I think part of that will involve training military forces on the ground currently over there, trying to defend and protect against this force. So really training these rebel forces to help them progress would be.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a minute. So what I'm hearing, it sounds a little bit like what happened in Iraq. And I think most Americans are going to be fairly against what we saw in Iraq. So does he have
Other
some
than
idea of how to keep it from turning into
yeah. So
Iraq or
so part of the problem with Iraq was we had boots on the ground over there. It became a war that we were involved in, and we're not sure that that's the answer. In fact, we're fairly certain that that's not the answer. We believe that we need to empower local powers to really work it out for themselves, rather than the U.S. getting fully involved and then pulling out and leaving us with ISIS, which is essentially what happened. So again, it's more than let's throw troops over there, win a war, and then pull out. It's more of let's empower and train and really set the stage for a new era of leadership, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. Anything else?
So I'd like to ask a little bit, what is Evan's stance on foreign aid? Does he accept current foreign aid policy? Is he looking to perhaps rein that in as a way to decrease the federal deficit?
I can't answer that in depth. I don't know his exact position regarding it, but I can say that as far as refugees, particularly Syrian refugees, Evan does believe that we need to help and support where possible. Does that mean allowing Syrian refugees over into the United States? It absolutely does. Evan believes that we have a thorough screening process and that the refugees that we are bringing over are not a national threat. Coming from an 11-year CIA operative, I trust his judgment on the issue. So yes, does the U.S. have a role in foreign aid and assisting those in need? Absolutely. Does it equal the amount of aid that we're providing now? I'm not sure that it does. Again, I can't answer any more in depth than that because I'm not sure Evan's exact position on it.
Is he going to give money to Iran?
I can resolutely say I doubt that that's the case. So no, we are not going to continue to fund Iran's nuclear programs or anything of the sort. This ransom money to Iran was way off base, to say the least. So.
As far as like borders go, how is he gonna deal with people who aren't here?
That's a great question, one that I am surprised I haven't answered yet. There are 11 million immigrants that are here illegally currently. Evan does believe that deporting 11 million illegal immigrants would damage our economy. And not only would it be inhumane to separate families, to tear families apart, but he truly believes that there would be serious repercussions to our economy. And I agree with him. There's a more tolerant way, there's a more acceptable way to go about this, and that is to work to provide a path to legalization for these 11 million immigrants. That doesn't mean a path to citizenship. It doesn't mean that they get the rights that we as citizens have, but it does equate to legal status here in America, where they contribute to society, they pay taxes, they're contributing members, but we avoid the expense and the economic downfall that would be involved in a large deportation effort such as that. That doesn't mean that we allow criminals and folks that are not helping our economy to stay. It means that we take action and we deport those that are contributing to crime and illegal activities. So that's the short answer to where he stands on that particular issue. There's just a more humane approach, a more reasonable approach, a less expensive approach. We can't afford to deport 11 million illegal immigrants. It's just not possible.
So to follow up a little bit on that question, is this sort of a plan to put these people on a path to naturalization? Or is this more of a, we're going to give you enough time to kind of put your ducks in a row?
The goal is ultimately to try and get people to work towards citizenship, of course, through legal means, which means that there needs to be some reform in our paths to our legal path to citizenships, currently our legal immigration routes. But it does mean that we provide work visas or student visas or whatever the case may be to those that are here currently. Again, so they're paying taxes. It may be long-term. It may be a long-term solution. But again, securing our borders is the first step. We can't enact all of these rules and these solutions while we still have an immigration problem. So we need to secure our borders. We need to reform the way that we allow people to come over here legally. We need to reform the way that we allow people to become citizens. And then we can go from there in deciding what we're going to do with the people that are already here. Anything? Yeah, please.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
What is Evan's stance on healthcare? Is he looking to repeal Obamacare? Is
Yeah.
he looking to amend it?
Yeah.
What is he looking to do?
A repeal of Obamacare. He believes that the federal government has no business dictating how we purchase healthcare and whether or not we should be forced to have healthcare policies. He believes that we do need to deregulate healthcare. We need to slash the borders on insurance providers so they can cross state lines, so that we can drive a more competitive market and compete the price down on healthcare rather than the government getting involved, which of course, as everyone in this room knows, actually increase the cost of healthcare rather than decrease it. So. What do we have anything else? I don't want to keep you guys all night. We've been here for an hour, so I know you have families to get back to. I'm going to go ahead and if you want to ask me additional questions, I'll stick around for a few minutes and we can kind of talk
Last
one-on-one.
question.
Yeah,
It's
Doug.
a short answer.
Yeah.
What's the best way, if we were to say, you know what, we're going to throw our weight behind Evan?
How can you support the campaign?
No, how do we, grassroots, 30 seconds is all someone's going to give us,
Yeah,
whether that's on Facebook or face to face.
that's a great question.
In 30 seconds, say, this is why I would vote for him.
The answer is you truly voiced why you support him. I'm voting for Evan because I believe in the founding principles of our country. I'm voting for Evan because I believe that he is the only conservative in the race. There is a path for him to win. I'd encourage you to check out the 12th Amendment. I'd encourage you to go to evanmcmullin.com and check out his policies and his issues and his platform and really decide for yourself whether he's the candidate for you to support. There is a path to victory for him. It's not a traditional path, but I'd encourage you to look further into it. That's really, the 30-second, here's what you should do approach. We also have a PDF one-pager bio/fact sheet on Evan. If you're interested in that, email me b.quinn@evanmcmullin.com. I'm happy to send that to you. I think it's very explanatory. It gives a real basic overview, and people are encouraged to see that somebody else is running for president. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know that we have a legitimate candidate who's running for president. And really, it's just building that name recognition. So, I'd encourage you, if we've earned your support tonight, to find 3 people that you can tell about Evan, that you can talk to and share why you support Evan and why you believe that they should as well. You sharing with 3 friends, we have 8 people here. If 8 of you share with 3 friends, we've got the support of 24 more people. If they share with 3 friends, then we've got the support of, what is that, 72 people, something along those lines. So yeah, I'd encourage you to do that. If you want to get more involved in the campaign, if you want to make phone calls from home, or help canvass, or to host one of these in your area or with your network of friends, again, send me an email, b.quinn@evanmcmullin.com. Great. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.